Good evening. It's Thursday, the 2nd of July. It's Thursday night, yeah. It's 9:30 p.m. Irish time. My internet connection is unstable, but you are watching Broadsheet on the telly. Welcome to the show. Joining us, as usual, the Queen of Crumlin. I hate the way YouTube does this. It repeats myself back to me. The Queen of Crumlin, the Diva of Dublin 12, Vanessa Vanessa, celebrity accountant Vanessa Foran. Hi, Vanessa.
Diva and Queen, I'm not sure. And as usual, it sounds awfully fed uppy, Neil.
I've do my best.
Hi,
I'm
everybody.
It's week 1 million of lockdown or whatever this new reality. I don't even know. I don't know. Then we have the King of California, the Emperor of East. I don't know. I can't do this anymore.
Okay.
He's out doing his
that's
shopping in
good, 'cause-
Walmart. Derek O'Donoghue. Hi, Derek.
Hi, Neil. I keep saying to you, I prefer chieftain or chief, a Gaelic term rather than king. You know, we're all Republicans here. You know.
Okay, Derek, for as long as you're in the west coast of California, you're as far away from your Carlo roots as you could ever be.
But California is also a republic.
There's a title for him. Carlo man lost his way.
That's
Out of his
I'm
way.
sure that's a Planksty song, I'm sure.
Is Saoirse Ronan from Carlo?
She is. Yes.
Ah, so you
A little
neighbours
bit
out
called-
there.
A little place called Ardatton. Yeah. My brothers, I think, knew some of the people she used to hang around with.
Saoirse, if you're watching, feel free to join, give us a call,
Yeah.
send us away. We'd love to hear from you.
She's a good bit younger than me now, but she's a fabulous actress. One of the best around. Probably Ireland's greatest ever actress, I would think. Another fantastic Carlo expert.
Well, that's a nice transition to I guess from one type of acting to another. We have a new government, and we have new ministers.
Yeah.
What are you folks making of our new leaders?
Was anyone shocked by the jobs as they were dished out, or was anyone shocked about? Sorry, when I say shocked now, is there anything that people were surprised by, or was anyone did you think that the Green Party were going to bring this home?
I was surprised that it happened. I was surprised the deal went through. I really thought that Leo would look for an out in some way. But I was very, very surprised that with Micheál Martin not selecting his deputy as a cabinet minister. Either he's very wise and very Machiavellian and is just really trying to pick the best people for the job, or he's very, very naive and he's after opening up a huge stick for his discontent to beat him with. He's putting people of huge influence within his party as a figureheads for the discontented. So when the discontented drums start to beat, and they will, because events happen and there's an economic crisis has been predicted and coronavirus is still here. When those drums start beating, there now is a number of figures in Fianna Fáil who are positioning themselves to be able to strike at the emperor. And so either Micheál Martin, right, is being very, very brave and actually putting what needs to be done and picking the right people for the job. Like, he also didn't pick anybody from Connacht. He ignored the usual geography base. So it's either like very, very naive, very like politically naive, or it's something that he believes in. Starting off, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say I hope he believes in it, but I think there's trouble coming. This thing won't last. I can't see this thing lasting.
It sounds like the back of a DVD box for a political.
I didn't hear that, but
we have the honeymoon period.
Okay, I was wondering, did you think, you know, they had carved up the ministries, say Leo and Micheál and Eamon Ryan had kind of carved up the actual ministries, and do you think that each of them did their own selection process, or do you think all three were party to the selection process of the whole government? Do you think they just took theirs?
I think it's very, very all the hallmarks of like a committee trying to design a horse and getting a camel, because there's that department that has like 6 different portfolios. You have art, culture, sport, tourism, Gaeltacht. Like it's just it's an incredible list of portfolios in one particular department. You know, it's and they don't. There isn't really it doesn't seem that the departments mesh well together. It seems like a little bit of everything. Who's I think is that Catherine Martin's portfolio? She's the minister for.
Well, she's basically got culture and all that bundle, if you know what I mean.
There's 6 different things there that like one for every day of the week and rest on Sunday. You know, it's you see. I think if we knew, did Leo, Eamon, and Martin, or was it just Leo and Martin? Did they actually sit down and say, well, Leo says, well, I'll hang on to justice and finance, and then you can have health, because we've had it for a few years anyway. And you know, like, did they decide it that way, or did they sit down and pick the ministers that they were going to engage as Taoiseach and Taoiseach? Do you know what I mean? But there's an argument. You can see both. Like, there's the new Minister for Education. It's her first day in the door. You know, it was great. It's great that she's a teacher, but what you call it? It's like, I'm sure the education spokespeople and the former education minister probably feel hard done by that they weren't included. But then I think I'm looking at Leo's position, and I was thinking, well, he got himself a nice cushy number, didn't he? Like Taoiseach and trade, nice little bit of foreign travel, lots of little bits of good news items to announce, any investments, very little real danger of controversial.
He's got a bit of a DOS one.
And lots of travel, like lots of like international engagement, you know. So it's, I think that seems to me to be like, well, this is the one I want, lads.
Yeah, he got a bit of a DOS one for himself, all right. But I have a big problem with Norma being appointed Minister for Ed, to be honest with you. I think her family background deserved further scrutiny. And for anyone who says, by the way, that children shouldn't carry the sins of their parents, let me tell you, when you exploit the political framework that was created by the parent, and you use the name and you run for the same party using the same local ground forces and teams to get you elected, yeah, you are responsible, because you're continuing on in a seat that was maintained and polished and retained and kept up by your own family. So yeah, you are responsible. So like, just to get that one out of the way. The other thing about Norma is,
sorry, before you go on to that, I have to disagree with you on that, Vanessa. Like, I think we all have like, you know, skeletons in our closet, if you like. We always have. Well, certainly I have. There's loads of things in my family that I'm very, very proud of, and there's also things that I'm not so proud of. And it's like, you cannot, like, I'm an individual, and I would not like to be tarred with any like sins of any forefathers or what have you. Judge me by my character and my actions. I do take your point about the organization, like that there's a structure in place there, and that she benefited from. But I don't think that you can automatically just jump to rule somebody out because of what a relative has done. Like, I know in my family we have lots of different political views. We've a wide range of political views and party and support many different parties. My mother was staunch Fianna Fáil. My father was staunch Fine Gael. And we were always encouraged to think for ourselves and make our own mind up. And I wouldn't like, for example, to be labelled anything because of who my mother supported or who my father supported or who my brother supported or whatever. So while I definitely take a point about there's a legacy of organisation there, I think it's allowed people to be judged on their own merits and judge each person by their character.
But that aside, education is hot property at the moment because of, again, we still don't have a clear roadmap to what school is going to look like or when school is going to look like. And, education should be something that's considered an essential service at this point in the crisis, given how long we haven't had it. And Derek, you're the education man here. How do you see that from afar? How do you see this panning out, given the shit that it's in at the moment? And clearly, when you see what's happened, I know I've said this last week, but when you see, what allowances have been given to the pub trade, and there's already a lot of anecdotal stories about how that's already been abused, and yet you have something that education that's been talked about for a lot longer in the mainstream, and yet we're still no closer to.
I think there needs to be a plan in place, a clear plan. Obviously, that's the first starting point. But the problem with having a plan in place is things are changing rapidly. I know that Santa Clara County has issued a document, a document about what should happen when kids go back to school, and it has teachers wearing masks. It has social distancing in the classroom, students wearing masks outside, keeping the same group of kids together when possible. Mandating the same group of kids stay together so that you don't mix classes around and stuff like that. So all this was being put in place, and a document is in place over here. I think it's a little bit less certain in Ireland as to what the plan is. But as I said to you, the problem is, right, we opened up here. We shelter in place was restricted. I went for a trip to LA. I went to meet some friends last Saturday night downtown San Jose. And now this week, we're back into shelter in place. Not as strict as it was first off, but we're back into shelter in place. Restrictions are being reimposed because the virus has exploded. I would have been on here the first couple of weeks saying what a great job we had done over here, and how, particularly in the Bay Area, how we had got a handle on things and we're doing great. And now that's out the window. We're having record numbers of cases.
Maybe park that for a little bit later, Derek, because I do know there's a lot of things happening there. But
well, look, I just finish the point, please. Just let me finish very quickly. So the plan in place. Things change, right? And the key thing is what's causing the spread. What they're saying is causing the spread is gatherings inside, whether that's family gatherings, parties, or meeting in pubs. Remarkably, what doesn't seem to have caused an increase, it has been the protests. So what they're saying is that the real danger, the evidence that's coming forward, at least what's coming forward in the press over here, is the real danger is those close, intimate gatherings of family members and friends gathering in large numbers, or people gathering inside in pubs. Now, if that's the case, right, if the case is it's inside is causing the problem, putting children all together in a classroom, and expecting them not to interact, I think is going to be a recipe for disaster.
Well, I suppose that kind of could bring us back to the Minister for Out Here, because it's her first Dáil term, as well as she's getting a big ministry. And I actually thought it would have been good for Joe McHugh to have some consistency there, because you also had the new Leaving Cert grades. At least he could take responsibility for that, whatever way that's going to work out. Nobody knows what it's going to be like back in a class of 30 when everyone has to stay a metre apart. And like, it's not just the teacher and the students, there's SNAs to be in there. There might be, other assistants, like carers and stuff in with students. So like, nobody knows. I accept what Derek said about the kind of carrying, not being responsible for the sins of the parents. And you made a very good point, and that's fair enough. But for me, when it comes to wholesale tax evasion, we're not talking like he chanced his arm. We're talking, there was decades of tax evasion. So for me, it's a no-go. It's a complete no-go. And even the Fianna Fáil party locally said the same, because they didn't put her on the ticket. She was put on the ticket by Micheál Martin at HQ. So anyway, well, nonetheless, Norma, I wish you the best in your new job. The educate. This is where we are when you're talking about the virus picking up, because we actually don't know what it's going to be like in September and October, and I think that's why there's a reluctance for everything to open up. Like hotels aren't taking bookings, like for conferences and weddings, holidays. Nobody's booking holidays abroad, because they don't know what it's literally week by week. And it's hard to know, will the second surge be actually worse? Because this is what's happening in America. So this government is deserves to be scrutinized up and down, left, right and center, because we're already in a crisis. Is it going to get worse, or is it going to get better before you can actually open the doors to the economy again? I think every seat in this government has to be scrutinized.
I think that's fair, and whether it gets worse or gets better, it's definitely not going away. We're stuck with this for years. But if we look at the Department of Health, so Simon Harris has wrapped up, and he's got this role in higher education, which kind of did raise a few eyebrows.
It's a great job. It's a great job for a lad who never graduated, isn't it?
Well, fair play to him. And
he didn't do too bad in health.
Well, he did. He kept it. Yeah, he did do too bad, all things considered. But Stephen Donnelly took up that role, and there was a part of me wondering if he asked for it. That's completely my speculating.
Well, he was the spokesperson. He was the Fianna Fáil health spokesperson for the entire term of the confidence and supply agreement. He's a man. I have a feeling he's going to run it like a project, as a project manager, because that's his background. He's from McKinsey's, so maybe that's what he's going to do. My problem with him is I think it's very hard to know what his political principles are, because he was one of the founders of the Social Democrats, and suddenly was very quick into their party kind of life term, or it was still a very young project as well, I suppose. And he was gone to Fianna Fáil. Like the politics in those two scenarios, those two parties, it just doesn't marry at all. So it's hard to know. Hello.
You're okay. You're okay.
All right, so it's hard to know what his political principles are. And actually, guys, I made a huge whopper of a boo-boo last week when we were talking about health, and neither of you spotted it. I'm surprised it wasn't all over the internet. Like, I was referring to a previous Minister for Health, and I said Mary O'Rourke. And I meant Mary Harney. It's not like I could miss one for the other. But anyway,
we do give allowances for your faux pas. We give allowances for your faux pas, Vanessa, don't worry.
Oh, that was more than a faux pas. That was an absolute screamer. I'm sorry, viewers. And neither here nor there. Health, you're beginning to see all the tweets now. Professor Coffey's put out a tweet about the amount of money we spent. And we actually have a terrible service. It's not so much the service, the infrastructure. There's so many moving parts. There's millions of moving parts in the health service, and none of them seem to be working together. you know,
But
lads.
when we look though, I mean, when you look at it's still the ink isn't dry yet. We've seen a lot of Stephen Donnelly, for obvious reasons. We've seen a lot of Leo. One person we haven't seen a lot though is the Commander in Chief himself, Mr. Martin, which I'm a bit surprised at. What do you make of that? We haven't seen a lot of him.
Has he taken in defence as well? You know the way Leo had defence as well the last time. He's maybe on his holidays. He's a teacher. They're used to longer holidays.
The right time to be taking a holiday.
Are
you surprised we haven't?
Well, I'm not surprised because I know there's murder in Fianna Fáil. There's killings. And, like at least with the Dara Calleary one, it's out in front and everyone, they're making it clear they're a bit upset that he was disappointed, but he's going to make the best of it. I know parts of Cork are very unhappy. One of the constituencies brings in 2 seats and neither of them got a mention. But I suppose there's only so much to go around, which they were already aware of. And then you have 3 people turning down jobs, turning down junior ministries. I'm not sure. Like, I think overall there's some very good appointments. The chances are Pascal will move on, take up this other job, and then that'll conveniently move Micheál McGrath up into finance, and then there'll be a spot for public expenditure, which in fact is going to be a very seriously, heavily watched, heavily resourced ministry over the next 4 or 5 years, because that was a kind of a new ministry in the Labour Fine Gael government. Brendan Howlin was his first minister.
And of course, the other big news of the day with health is Tony Holohan has stepped away from duties. Obviously he's got a sick family member. So I guess that we'll see more of Philip Nolan taking over. It's a day though where Ireland has been announced as having the lowest rates of the virus in Western Europe. I haven't seen the stats behind it yet, but it was certainly looking like that for some graphs from the other day. But it kind of the big talk, of course, is travel. I mean, every time I turn on the radio, they're talking about travel. And certainly Waterford's Whispered News hit the nail on the head with one of their articles today in relation to it.
What do they say?
The non-essential, essential, non-essential. It's very good. Check it out. Derek's already on his holidays because he's in the shopping centre there in California. But there's been a lot of clips of people who are leaving the country, and of course, we're in that zone now of we're saying certainty, but uncertainty. But I guess lack of clarity is the big issue. But just as you're talking there, I'm just seeing some news that one of the papers, one of the red tops, is speculating that Micheál Martin is hinting there'll be no summer travel whatsoever. From an interview he did this evening, his first interview. There you go. He's out at the docks.
So, hello. Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, interrupting. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can, Derek.
Yeah, I had a bit of an issue there. Our air conditioner has been broken, and we just got a new unit replaced, and the guy was just leaving, so I had to go and do something there.
Had to fix them up.
Had to fix them up. So apologies. And then I was trying to speak, and I was on mute, so I didn't realise. Yeah. So I'm sorry that I missed everything.
That's okay. Tony Holohan will be there. There would be a large bank of equally senior medics in the Department of Health anyway. So I don't think there'll be a gap. Certainly not for too long. And that team actually, the NPET top table you see at the news conferences every day, they do seem to work very well together. So I think his role will be covered very, equally well. And I wish him the best, with having a you know, for family reasons. It's always a very uncomfortable reason, you know, when it's so public, you're having to step down, and then it's not private at all. And so I, you know, look, best wishes to Tony and his family. Things go on, you know, like it just shows actually how much life still goes on when you have when these sort of so much action and complications, you know, everywhere else. So yeah.
Sorry, I said Philip Nolan. Why did I say that name? Ronan Glynn is who I mean. I don't know why I got two names mixed up. So Ronan Glynn is the acting CMO.
See, I do that too.
Yeah, Mary O'Rourke.
Come here.
Maybe Harley.
I know I missed the conversation, but Neil, you mentioned Stephen Donnelly in health, and I'm sorry for going back. I remember his first when he burst onto the scene first on Vincent Brown. That's where he I first came aware of him. He was super impressive. Wow, he knew his stuff on the banks, and so on. And I thought, this guy is really sharp. This is the sort of guy we need in politics. But once he got elected, and then once he left the Social Democrats to join Fianna Fáil, I just I don't know. I found myself losing respect for him. Now I say I haven't been aware of how he's performing in as a spokesman for health, but from what I saw in the debates, he didn't seem to be too on top of his game. I think Simon Harris wiped the floor with him in a couple of debates in the run up to the election. So I wish the man well. I hope he does something, but I wouldn't hold out much hope. And it's just the other thing I want to say about the ministers. You mentioned about finance moving on, Pascal. I think that's a joke as well, to be, if he's appointed Minister of Finance and he leaves it. If he has intentions of going somewhere else, he shouldn't have accepted the position of finance. But if he does go, I don't think Fine Gael will give that position up to the junior minister. I think Fine Gael.
Micheál McGrath will take that spot. He's public expenditure, so they're kind of two ministers that run well, not personally well together, but the sort of the briefs are very, very connected. The thing about the finance minister, and though it's very high profile and they get to deliver the budget, and they're on the telly a lot and the news and on the wireless, and everyone knows Pascal is there. You know, you could ask anyone on the street who's our minister for arts, culture and the Gaeltacht, and they'd have to think, who's your minister for finance, and they'll always be able to name it. The thing is, as a department itself, it's actually quite small. It wouldn't be the size of health or agriculture or social welfare. Mm-hmm. So if he's going to get the bigger job, Fine Gael, if they hang on to it, who would they put into it? Because their junior minister the last time was Patrick Donovan. So
yeah,
I don't know who
well, I just think as a senior ministry, I'd say like when they're putting down who's getting what, I think one of the first jobs that goes is finance. It's one of the like a lot of future leaders like to have finance as on their CV. You know, it's so I think it's like it's one of the sought after positions, and I'd say when they're before they decide who's getting what, if they're doing it on what party is getting what, like the Greens are getting like climate change, like Fine Gael want to see themselves as being the ones that are the steady hand on the economy, and I just can't see them giving it up easily. But I think if he go on to a different job, like after, I don't know, I'd be uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, but Fine Gael have always had a senior man in Europe, and Phil's term will wrap up close enough now because he's pulled out of the WTO race for that job. Fine Gael have always had a high-ranking member there or thereabouts at the top table in Europe. But, you know, neither Leo nor Micheál Martin have ever been Minister for Finance.
But that's unusual. Most other Taoiseach, I think all other Taoiseachs served as finance.
Yeah. I suppose as the announcers, for me, it was all about who was going to be getting the jobs, who was getting what jobs, and there was some of them made a lot of sense. And I was absolutely thrilled. And I'm sorry about this, Minister. I tried to get your photograph up on the back, but for some reason it's not copying over. I'm delighted for Helen McEntee. I think that was a great appointment. Now I know Jim is disappointed, and everyone would have thought he was going to get the job. And there's nothing wrong with people assuming Jim O'Callaghan was going to get that job. He's been a practicing lawyer for a long, long time. He's been the Fianna Fáil spokesperson on justice for a long, long time. He's senior counsel, and he's Dublin. Fianna Fáil have a very poor profile in Dublin in terms of elected representation at national level. And but I do think the Helen McEntee appointment is probably the one that will prove everybody wrong, going on what I've seen being said about the appointment. And actually, I was talking to a very senior minister from the department last night, from the Department of Finance last night, as senior civil servant. And he was telling me he's clerk for one of the committees, the Dáil committees, and he was telling me that she mangles them. She can run rings around all of them. She's been in Leinster House Insider for over 10 years. She's very smart.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Smartest in there.
I think she's an impressive lady.
The idea, yeah, and I think taking direct provision out of justice and putting it, the Greens have it, Roderick O'Connor's ministry, that has direct provision. And I think there's an enormous opportunity there for the Green Party to really make their mark. And I'm really glad that their vote wasn't just on the edge, it was a resounding support to go into government, because now they're in the position to make decisions. There's no point being an outlier all your political life and say what you like and run up and take a side on any issue of the day, knowing you may never have to make a decision.
Yeah.
So like you can stay on the fringes all you like and have all the sort of the issues and the grandstanding and all, the hard decisions, and and live with, and without having to live with making a decision. Because now, I'm just going to say Breed and Richard Boyd Barrett and Paul Murphy and all these, right? They have these very unique sort of populist almost causes, and they can speak at length and they on a number of issues that most ministers can't. But you see, that's great when they're able to be that type of politician. But if they were in government, they would have to compartmentalize all those views so they can make a decision.
Yeah,
and so the Green Party have actually put their money where their mouth is. And I know now some of their own members are unhappy, but you have an enormous opportunity to grow and establish yourselves as a party of government now, because direct provision is in your hands. And I'm absolutely sure you're in a position and you have the capacity to turn that story around. I really do. And they also have local government now as well. So now, like, make the changes that you've been talking about at local government.
So what would a successful 5-year government that had Green influence on it look like? I'm thinking like real practical things, like public transport in the towns and cities, really effective public transport, really effective cycle lanes, like really that people will want to use and will use. I think they would be too massive. They would be too massive. Like that, Greens would be able to say in 5 years' time, look, the trains are running on time. Look at every town has like these wonderful cycle lanes, like real proper cycle lanes, not a lick of paint on the road. I think they would be two massive things that the Greens could do.
Well, they have that ministry. They have that ministry, and they have the local authority. So maybe we're already starting to see more pedestrianised streets now,
So, but I'm incredibly anxious. Sorry, Derek.
That could be a real positive, like that the Greens could say in 5 years' time, we have cycle lanes, we have pedestrianised cities, We have public transport working better, and we've done something about direct provision. And I think if the Greens concentrate on those issues, they could be able to have something really concrete to tell people. If the Greens get bogged down in some of the more, I don't know,
the fringe issues,
that are hard. Like, we're going to be talking about climate change for 100 years. We're not going to solve climate change in 5 years, right? And even if Ireland does everything, even if we give up all our cars and never flew again, like, the impact Ireland can have on climate change is minuscule. That's the saying we shouldn't do it. Obviously, like, climate is important, and obviously we should be environmentally friendly as much as we possibly can be. But if the Greens start getting bogged down in that and not dealing with the real practical things that impact people's lives, I think they will quickly become very unpopular.
I was incredibly anxious at the prospect of them handling transport because, like you say, cycle lanes are great and all the rest. But you know what we've seen from before, the last time as a coalition, is there was it leaning towards just taxing anything they deemed as problematic. You know, our public transport is great depending on where you live, and certainly once you leave the big cities, things start to dry up fairly rapidly. You know, I imagine congestion charges for traveling into the city are going to be back on the table. You know, alternates to people using their own vehicles, you know, viable alternates, improvements of public transport are absolutely necessary. But I'm quite fearful of what it means to, well, hopefully with the change in working practices and people being able to work from home and greater flexibility, that will add to, you know, easing that. But certainly it'll be interesting to see how that goes. We've seen, you know, even small issues, but certainly things like e-scooters are still illegal here. I mean, they're incredibly green, and there's very successful Uber type models of those in other countries.
Are they green though? Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the production of them. I know a lot of these, like electric cars, there's people who say that the production of them is just as polluting, but certainly the operation of them, they get plugged in. I mean, you're in California, Derek. You've got that. There's a number of Uber included. I've used the Bird service where you open an app, you jump on a scooter. And certainly when I'm in California, where I will use that as opposed to jumping in a car or a taxi where possible.
They're hugely popular in downtown San Jose, up in San Francisco. They're all over the place. There's various different companies, and they're widely used.
So is the segue gone? Is that like yesterday's news?
Oh, it's all about the e-scooters. It's all about the e-scooter. I mean, European cities, you know, they're legal in a lot of other European countries, but they're still illegal here. Yet they're an incredibly convenient way to get around. They're environmentally friendly, but they're illegal. You know, that would seem like a no-brainer, low-hanging fruit thing that could be tackled. But that's just one example.
Well, I'll give them one now as well that they can tackle. How about legalizing medicinal cannabis and letting people grow their own?
I don't think that falls under transport, though.
No, but you see, in terms of agriculture, Derek introduced agriculture, and they have a junior minister in there now in agriculture, Pippa Hackett, and you know, like they're talking about reducing the numbers of the beef herd. It's a God-given business to get into the cultivation of cannabis plant and bud and weed and all that.
And Vanessa, it's legal.
It's legal over here. About it. And you know, Johnny,
society hasn't fallen down. Do you know what I mean?
No, and Johnny's heavily involved in the legalized medicinal cannabis business. You know, who was on the show from New York a few weeks ago, and we Broadsheet had viewers. You know, the Johnny Green columns, and we've done a show on it here. We've done a show, haven't we, Neil? Was it one or two shows on the? We'd veer on the show one time. And it's a God-given opportunity for Ireland to just come out of this recession now, this deep V, with having a good, better look at this. If you don't think Irish weed couldn't be the next Kerry Gold, you're out of your minds, folks. And you know, so I think it's an enormous opportunity for the Green Party as well, because that's an alternative to the intensive beef farming that they seem to be getting their asses kicked on, you know.
A very quick story for you. was at my dentist, and the girl knew I wasn't from America. She wasn't from California. She's from New York. So why are you living out in California? She goes, oh, I moved out here with my husband. He used to work on Wall Street. He used to work on Wall Street in New York, but he came out to California to work with Apple. But he's now left Apple and he's now CEO of a weed company. So like there's that's how serious it is. Somebody going from Wall Street to Apple to
sure, Johnny Hamilton's is one of those.
Yeah.
It's definitely something. I mean, that's again something to consider. Maybe there's another show in the running there, because that is a story that's not going to go.
I think
away.
It's another show. Yeah, I think it is, because it's an enormous opportunity for Ireland and for agriculture seen as a replacement activity. You know.
Mm.
I don't have the answers. I don't smoke weed at all. So I couldn't tell you what one way or another how it all works. But I do know numbers and I do know business, and I think it's an enormous opportunity for Ireland. It really is. Anyway, moving on.
Rumor has it if Derek takes down that green screen behind them, he's a Heisenberg of the Silicon Valley. I don't know.
Absolutely. No. I have to refute that. I've absolutely.
Is that
my lungs,
bad? Is it?
My conscience are clear.
I wanted to bring up the topic of travel briefly, because it's not dominated, but it's in the news a lot the last few days. I wanted to go back to that. And there's a divided people. The media have been out interviewing people in the airport. Tourists are bad. Tourists are not bad. We're hearing anecdotally of a lot of US tourists pottering around the west of Ireland. What are your thoughts?
Well, I told you.
You know what? Now, unless I'm going somewhere, I don't give a shite. There you go, folks.
Yeah, it's not for me to tell anybody else what to do. But as we were supposed to go to Tahoe this weekend, up to Lake Tahoe, see Tahoe in the summertime. But we're meeting friends up there. But neither us or our friends are going to go now. Just with because of the explosion of the virus. It's like the explosion is a real thing. It has happened, and there's like Arizona is in crisis state, Texas is in crisis state, California is heading towards crisis state, and that's after months of sacrifice and isolation and loneliness, and finally starting to come out of it. And as soon as you start to come out of it, walloped with this. So
I had to look at the map the other day. The New York Times have a map of all the different countries and even America, then, but it's by state. And it was I followed it up on the basis that this, we're going to have like a land bridge, effectively, the EU, right? And then they were going to add 14 other countries onto it. And some of the countries they were adding on, were just ridiculous, like Algeria, like places that are well into the red, and you could see it was political, that who they were stopping and who they were bringing in, who they were adding to the list. So I had to look at this map, and it was shocking the numbers that are got where it was kind of, let's just say, where the R naught was less than 1, and suddenly now it's just gone mad. And our R naught here today went up. It's gone back up.
We do have to bear in mind, because we're not hearing a lot of talk about the R number, and that's because as cases decrease, small fluctuations can cause it to increase, and so it's not as reliable. What a lot of countries are doing now is publishing number of cases in prior weeks, in a lot per 10,000 inhabitants, and there's a lot of graphs that are going around which are quite interesting. One I saw a few days ago showed Ireland for the last 2 weeks of June, our rate was incredibly low. In fact, compared to other countries, exceptionally low, or some other European countries. But we're left in a position though where we are very much the outliers in Europe. Our borders aren't closed. You can travel to Ireland, you have to fill in a form, and that's your legal obligation completed. And the advice is that you quarantine, and clearly, I'm hearing anecdotally of people arriving on flights from the US and they're not even being handed locator forms. Contrast that with Spain. because it's the country I'm most familiar with. It's a pity we don't have Luke to talk about Portugal. But Spain, you have the automated temperature check machines in the airport. You have an app or an online form that you fill in. Every single person, including children, has to have this form filled in. It gives you a barcode that you scan in the airport. It's kind of one of these affidavits that says, I'm not sick, I haven't been in touch with anyone, and here's where I'm staying, kind of thing. And all of that stuff. So I mean, the comparison in the that was given today, and I can't remember who made the comparison, but it was New Zealand. Look what happened to New Zealand was mentioned. But the reality is, we can't compare Ireland to New Zealand anyway, is that we can't keep our borders closed indefinitely. Our borders aren't closed, but it seems to be very much a penalizing Irish people. Not everyone who wants to travel or is doing so to go on their jollies. And certainly the reality is, you can't speak in general terms. There's a world difference between somebody heading off for a weekend to the UK or somebody heading off to an area where the rates of the virus are less or equal to what Ireland has. And certainly from an ECDC perspective, you know, they haven't. Our department, our NPAT, and is out of sync with what the ECDC is.
So what would you suggest, Niall or Neil? What would you suggest that should happen with regards to travel and flights and if you're Minister for Transport now, what would you be doing or advising?
Well, I'd take Vanessa's advice on board and legalize weed first, because I think that's what she was getting at. After that, though, no. Well, you see, I'm not in any way medically qualified, but certainly when you have CMOs of other countries or their equivalent, when you have the ECDC providing guidance, it does make you ask the question, and you also have to consider you can't continue this indefinitely. And you know, the outgoing government did say they'd have a list of safe countries, air bridges. We were aligning ourselves with the UK, who dropped the bombshell today that they're actually not doing air bridges. They're just going to align themselves more so with Europe and do up this list. So we can't use that anymore. But Donnelly then said today, I think it was today, he said, well, we said we'd have a list by the 9th of July, but that doesn't mean it'll be active on the 9th of July. People who have booked holidays from before when this all happens obviously are going to lose out financially. What the answer is, I don't have an answer. I can't say it should be this, but certainly we should be looking, you know, at the advice. We can't, the virus isn't going away. We can close the door all we want, but we're going to have to open it at some point. You know, we have to balance, you know, the economic needs of the country at some point, and that has to be done. How that is done, I don't know, but it feels like we're not doing anything. We don't have automated temperature. I actually saw one of those automated temperature machines. Somebody was showing me a type that was being fitted in a commercial premises. I got to see it the other day. And literally as soon as you pass it, it instantaneously tells you what your temperature is. Like, it's incredibly efficient. You know, at a bare minimum, are we looking at putting like things like this in place? Do we have the contact tracing ability? Some people reckon we don't. Have we got the ability to do that? The app that's been talked about a lot, where is that? I know not every country has that, but it definitely feels like there's not a lot happening in the background in preparation for that. I don't know.
Do you know,
what about the increase in cases, though? I mean, I said we had these plans to go this weekend, and we're frightened now. Not it's a frightened. We're very concerned, very concerned by the increase in cases that have happened, and it feels like we've just reset the clock. So the 3.5 months, 4 months of hardship has just been now reset, and like.
But Derek, to be fair, the US hasn't had the hardship that Europe has endured, and I mean that respectfully. You know. The US came out of lockdown while the curve was still on the way up, you know. So at the moment, it's like the house is on fire and we're going to move from the living room to the bathroom, but it's still all on fire anyway. So I don't think any state has endured the hardship to the same. Well, maybe New York and the East Coast, Connecticut, Massachusetts, they have been a lot more disciplined.
In fairness, Neil, that's not true. In like the Bay Area, the counties around the Bay Area, we were the first to close down. We were the first to have the shelter-in-place order. And it was pretty severe. I mean, we didn't have the 2-kilometer restriction, but we had a very severe shutdown. Like the 6 counties around the Bay Area, about 7 million people, and it did work. And we flattened the curve, and cases were going down, and we had days with no deaths and so on. And that's why it's really worrying, because we were so good, and mask wearing and stuff had a huge compliance here, and yet as soon as we open up, as soon as restrictions are lifted, there's been an explosion, and that's worrying. And it's like, yes, large parts of America didn't have that, and it's like peeing in a swimming pool. Somebody used that analogy, like that if Florida and Texas don't have shut down, you can't stop pee spreading in a swimming pool. And look at it. It's very downheartening and depressing what has happened in the last week, and seeing the numbers. It really is.
Yeah, do you know?
If you could, sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
Well, the teenager came up with an analogy. She said people didn't know what they were doing in February and March, but they were just locking in, and now people are actually not scared of it anymore, and that's why there's more out and about. You would not know anywhere and I live in the inner city effectively, you would not know there was a pandemic.
I must look at the map of Dublin again there.
And I have Leo on the pitch on behind me there. I'm going to see, can you see him, right?
Yeah. On
Saturday, when they convened Dáil in the National Conference Centre, when they elected Micheál as Taoiseach, and then he went off to the Áras to get his medals, and there was buses collected all the TDs to bring them back wherever they were going. It was obviously back to Leinster House possibly, and the only TD that was on all the buses bringing them back with a mask was Leo. And you had the Sinn Féin funeral during the week. And I'm not actually, I don't want this to be an angst thing, I just don't think people are afraid. I don't want this to start, when I say that, I don't want it to be an argument about Sinn Féin and Michelle O'Neill at a funeral. But I just don't think people are afraid of it now. So maybe when they come in, they're not washing their hands as we were demented doing in February and March. That's what I think. I don't think people are afraid of it.
What percentage of people are wearing masks now?
Now this is a good question, because there was a percentage of 80% mentioned by the government or by the HSE. No. Somebody mentioned there was a figure 80%. I've been in Dundrum Shopping Centre twice in the last week, and now I wear a mask. I wear a mask all the time, and there was no way the compliance level was at that rate. I would, at best, maybe 40 to 50% at best. It certainly looked better today than it did last week. But 40 to 50% at best. But you have to remember with face masks, there's tweets still up on Tony Holohan's timeline where he was saying, you don't need to wear a face mask, that only people in the front line should be wearing a face mask. Scotland has made face masks mandatory in retail centres today. Face masks are not mandatory here. And again, as you've seen in the US, people will do what they're allowed to do. And until that changes, like Spain, again, and I can mention some facts about the resurgence and the new cases in Spain. Spain, it is an on-the-spot fine, €100. If you go to a bar or restaurant and you want to get up and have a pee, you have to put your mask back on you. You don't have to wear a mask when you're eating or drinking. If you're indoors, obviously you wear a mask. If you get into a taxi, you wear a mask. If I pick you up to give you a lift somewhere, Derek, we have to wear masks because we're not from the same house, and it's very strict. In fact, it's illegal not to carry a mask around with you, even if you don't need to wear it. So anywhere where you can't practice social distancing, you must wear a mask, and people just get on with it. They do it. But here it's not mandatory, and it should be mandatory. But just kind of getting back to what you're saying, what the Chiseler was saying, Vanessa, and about complacency. There is a model in virology, or whatever the correct term is, called Farr's model or Farr's law, and this is where the whole bell curve thing and behaviors change as a result of what we go through. So hygiene certainly has improved. I mean, now you can't turn your head and you're not looking at a hand sanitation station. People are, there is a percentage of people who are wearing masks, even though they're not legally mandatory. And so behaviors do change. So when you look at the resurgence second waves, we have to consider that we're not in the same landscape we were 3-4 months ago. We know a lot more about the virus now than we did back then. Now, Spain have had a number of outbreaks since they was, the date that Spain opened up the borders was the 21st of June. And they're very heavy-handed in how they deal with things with Spain, and they've said all of that. Now, of course, we're going on what they say, the government says there, but they've said all of the outbreaks they've deemed to be under control. So they go into an area, they lock it down very quickly, contact tracing and all the rest. What was interesting in the Spanish press the other day, because you would immediately assume it's down to tourism, particularly because folks from Britain are allowed into Spain. But the reference that was given was actually family gatherings was the cause of some of the outbreaks in Spain, and fiestas, local towns having fiestas and social distancing not being practiced. And that was actually blamed as opposed to tourism.
Well, you'd think you'd be scared, Neil. You'd think you'd be scared to go there.
But the point they're trying to make, though, is sorry, Derek. Just the point I'm trying to make is, we're going to have spikes and waves. It's how we handle that. I mean, realistically, if there's an outbreak in Carlow, will the government go in and lock down an area? What's a cordon sanitaire or sanitaire cordon? What's the French word? Will that actually happen? What does that look like? Certainly, again, I'm quite familiar with Spain. Spain have this phase model that they can roll back and forth to, and they've done that. UK has done that with Leicester, and there's talk of them doing it in other areas. Will we do that in Ireland? Is that?
It makes a lot of sense from public health point of view. Sorry, Derek.
Yeah, sorry, okay. What the governor here, he refers to as a dimmer switch. That he has a dimmer switch to be able to turn things up and down. To roll back the regulations and go forward with them. But you just mentioned the point there, Neil, about small gatherings, family gatherings and fiestas. And I mentioned that earlier on in the discussion when we're talking about kids going back to school. That seems to be the evidence here as well, that the spread or the outbreaks happen in family gatherings and in closed spaces. That's the big worry.
That's fair. But technically, gatherings in Ireland indoors up to 50 people are now permitted. That's a gathering. Pubs, they reduce social distancing in pubs. I know I keep harping on this, but they've reduced it to 1 meter. But it's again based on what I know the WHO guidelines say a minimum of 1 meter. But why is that exception being made just like that for pubs, but not in education? That I know they're going to now reduce to 1 meter. So that's the thing that's happening. But it's not legally enforced in the pubs. So anecdotally, we've all heard the stories about pubs. I've heard of one pub where the cover charge was €9 for a sandwich. No sandwiches were served. It was packed to the rafters on the first day. But there's going to be no legal enforcement of that. So what's the point? The Vinters have this. Well, not the Vinters, but publicans now have this setup where you shouldn't do that, but if you don't, oh well.
Well, I think it does come down to personal responsibility as well. And I do take your point that, if you're allowed to do it, you'll do it. And hands up, did it. Like, went to the pub Saturday night, socially distanced, wore a mask the whole way. Only when I was drinking my beer did I take off the mask. But I did go to the pub because you were allowed. Those trolleys that are behind me. I mentioned earlier on the shopping trolley theory of like personal responsibility. Like, talk about people's character, how you handle a trolley can display what sort of character you are. If you end up leaving your trolleys like this, right? Well, then you're not going to be a very good person. That you can read into what people are like in the rest of their lives by what they do with their shopping trolleys, shopping carts.
That sounds like something you'd read on.
All right, just tell me what am I? I always put mine back.
You always go back.
Click it through. What does that mean now? Does that mean I'm some psycho killer?
No, that means you're a very good person.
I knew that. I could have told you that.
Don't mind her. She gets someone else to do the shopping for her. Don't mind her.
I do. I don't have to do a bit here, folks. It's all done for me.
Do you put it back in the store? Do you bring it back inside the store, Vanessa, or do you go to the trolley bay?
I go to the bay.
Well, then you're neutral good. You're
I'm
not lawful good, but you're neutral good, right? So that's in the top 3, right?
Yeah, but hang on, what supermarkets let you bring them all back in?
Well, this is just the guideline that the theory has here. It says if you bring it back to the store, that's lawful good. Bring it back to the corral, you're neutral good. If you bring it near the corral, you're chaotic good. But then there's a whole lot of other things. Then if you like something like this here is like
Is
this is evil. This is neutral evil, right?
how can you be neutral and evil at the same time? Ari, you're making this up. Was somebody
He saw
did
this.
Trump
It's either
put
on
this out? This sounds like something Trump issued.
Okay, there's three levels of evil, right? There's lawful evil, where a number of people stack the cards together in a place that's like in a car parking space, but three cars or four cars pushed together. That's like people trying to keep them together, but not bothering putting them back into their own car, into their own space. And that's lawful evil. Then you have neutral evil, is like leaving them in the car parking space, like here. This is neutral evil. And then chaotic evil is throwing it in the canal or throwing it in the river or whatever.
Derek, we're getting a call from Drew Harris. He wants to know if you want a job in the currency economy.
Yeah.
He says that if only they knew this before.
Yeah,
I know. Well, was this actually a study, or is this some lads, fed up? Is this sort of like a lockdown challenge thing? What kind of trolley are you?
I think it was somebody on Twitter, but I just happen to agree with him. I just happen to fully agree with him.
It all comes out now.
But it's a pet.
Do you know, lads? How did this virus take over the world? When you have just this type of brilliance living in it.
Why
didn't Twitter sort it out?
It's a pet hate of mine. So when I just saw this in the car park the other day, and I said I'd have to show it. But it does tie into the conversation we're talking about in terms of like I'm not sort of the idea of enforcement, right? Making people wear things. People should wear a mask. People should social distance. People shouldn't. 60 teenagers shouldn't go to a house party in Waterford. But
this was on that video was on in a thread during the week, right? And now there was a bit of crack with it, the state of it on. But do you know what freaked me out was the person videoing it, and I thought that was very creepy because this is a very busy area here. Now, I'm not saying there's parties with 60 and 70 lads in them, but there's, when the pubs are open, you can hear, or if there's an Ireland match, like from my bedroom, I can hear them giving out and stuff like this. You just filming people from behind your windows going about their day. I'm sorry.
There should be a study done.
With me.
There should be a study done on that. There should be a study done on that. The type of people who actually sit back and watch and record what everybody's doing.
There's your lockdown challenge now.
They're psychos. They are absolute psychos.
Derek, we've had a question from JDF Reality in the chat pit, and he said, what if you were a single person who doesn't really use trolleys and gets by on baskets? Do we not exist? Do we not matter? Are you discriminating against basket carriers?
Ask him, does he stack his basket nice and neatly, correctly with other baskets underneath the cash out, or does he just stack it there and the next person has to come along, can't put their basket in? So it depends on how he treats his basket. You see, the beauty about this thing is, right, there's no enforcement. This is just something that you should do because it makes everything better for everybody else. And it takes no time. It takes no effort.
You should write an article for the site, Derek. We'll get John to put it up on the site.
Does that not bug you? Look at that. Why would you do that?
There's a touch of the Victor Meldrew now coming out here.
There is. There is. I think you're losing it, Derek. I think you need that break.
Before we know it, he's the Unabomber, using his poo to fertilize his rhubarb,
I think you need that break after all, Derek. Head off to Tahoe yourself.
This is why I struggle when I think about, am I going to go back home to Ireland or whatever? It's this type of thing. It's feck it, it'll be all right. Somebody else will do it. That bugs me, Anyway, that's soapbox.
Well, Derek, certainly I shop in Dunn stores because That's where I shop.
His vouchers.
And
He gets his vouchers.
Dave, depending on which Dunnes stores you go to, because there's 2 Dunnes stores I can shop in, but they have trolley attendants. The trolley attendants used to take the trolley out for you. There was a honeymoon period where the trolley attendant would actually, you didn't have to put in your euro. They'd take the trolley out and hand it to you. They'd squirt it down. But now you go and you have to put in your euro. But the trolley attendants in there spraying down the trolleys. So, we've very good discipline.
The fact that you have to put a euro into your trolley demonstrates how big of a problem it is. That they had to actually invent this contraption where you put your euro in, and if you don't bring the trolley back, it costs you a euro. That shows you how bad people are, how many psychopaths are living in the country.
I get very anxious removing the trolley from the trolley bay because I always think I'm going to get the trolley where the euro gets stuck and I can't get it out. There's an old lady behind me tutting. I have nightmares about this. And then when I do get it out and it's wonky and it's like, oh, do I bring it back or do I just be a hard man about it and just I'm going to push this bendy trolley? I mean, there has to be psychology behind that as well. People who push the crooked trolleys and if you can't get the euro in and you can't get it out. I do get anxiety over it.
Would you leave your euro in the trolley, Neil, now, or would you call like the security man over to make you take out to help him to use his help to take the euro out? Would you leave it there? I'd say you'd be the kind that would call your man back to take out the euro. I mean, you wouldn't leave it there, for the next person, like in a paid forward way.
No, I wouldn't. No, I want my euro back.
Jesus, you're miserable.
I am miserable. I let someone in ahead of me in the queue to the supermarket the other day, though. That's my good. There's my good deed.
Did you get a thank you card from them?
It was a gentleman of elderly persuasion, and I said, "Jump in ahead of me, there, sir." That's what it's about. It's not about the weight, the slope on the trolley. It's about that. That's me paying it forward.
Well, here's the thing: you're there in the supermarket with your 1 bottle of wine, or maybe 2 bottles of wine, and somebody in front of you has a trolley with about 125 items, and that person who doesn't say, "You go ahead, sir." A special place in hell for them.
Let's.
Derek has lost his mind. There's any doctors out there.
John, would you ever come back and sort this shit out?
Well, what kind of? That's the question.
This wouldn't happen when John was in charge. That's all I'm saying. Cribbing about trolleys. Jesus Christ. Who gives a shite? I'm just going, where you put the trolley, lads. All I care about is unless some fucker hasn't rammed it into the side of the car. I can imagine
Derek walking through the car park at Target or whatever store, and he's going, disgraceful. Look at those people. It's disgraceful. I'd
say he's a moany bollocks in the shopping. I'd say he is miserable. I'd say he's the one now that's in the queue for the 10. 10 items or under, and he's there counting how many the other people have in case they have one item over, and he scats them. And I bet
he probably sells it. He probably sees them.
Or he's at the bottle bank and somebody 100%. Puts a green bottle into the brown bottle section. I'd say he's on that like a bonnet.
Oh, that's all. That's a myth. The color coding of bottles is a myth. We don't need to color code bottles. It all goes into the same truck.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's true. Look, I've learned a lot during this pandemic. A lot of things that.
Can I? Anyway, I'm going to a restaurant on Saturday evening. I'm meeting the wonderful Norma Burke for dinner. Here, I'll do a plug because I never do plugs. You used to always do them. The Blackbird in Rathmines, meeting Norma, aka Bunty, for a drink and pizza or whatever it is they serve in there. So that's lovely. My night out on Saturday, and but there's a show. It's the BBC did a drama doc. It's about the Salisbury poisonings. The Russians.
Mm.
And Anne-Marie Duff is in it, is the lead, and I highly recommend that as viewing over the weekend if you're in lockdown and you're not going to Spain or.
I was in a restaurant today. I was in a restaurant today for lunch.
What was it like? And, was there a screen up between you and your?
No, it was empty. At the outdoor space had a few people at tables. It was lunchtime. There was two other people in the restaurant. The staff wore those visors, like the welding visors. Although there seems to be a gap between the chin and because it comes out at an angle. However, I have to say it. Not that it's an issue. Derek might psychoanalyze me, but it's so weird looking at people wearing these, visors. But it's interesting though. Like instinctually, I got up to go to the restroom and I put my mask back on, even though there's no one in the restaurant. But yeah, the use as things were being served, I was like, is it over the top if I like disinfect my hands again with sanitizer? And then between each course, do we sanitize? It was an interesting. I was very self-conscious straight away because that was my first time eating out since obviously all of this started. Didn't make it as enjoyable now, but you'll have a different experience Saturday night, I'm sure.
Yeah, sure. Listen, I'm getting out.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Yeah. I was at the beautician the other day and to get the bits and all the rest done, and the therapist when she went from one part of the body to the other, she actually went to wash her hands and changed her mask. It must have been an awful state. But yeah, did you not notice I now have actually eyebrows, folks?
Very good, very fetching.
They don't look like lumps of turf or something. So anyway, what's the new movie? Oh, Neil! I watched a show last night. And I thought of you, and I said, I'll watch this now just for Neil because it was your type of show, and he'd be because you went and did the baking for me, and just to be a good friend. So I watched it, and it's Stargirl. No,
Stargirl. Hang on now.
DC. Neil loves his superhero DC Marvel comic stuff.
I don't love all that comic book. Stargirl, I could see it's this TV series. I'm not familiar with it. I was thinking of Starman with Jeff Bridges, or Lloyd Bridges. Jeff Bridges.
No, it's a new show. The production quality is very, very good actually. And one of the Wilsons is in it. I don't know which one. They all look the same. It's got potential. It's got potential. Yeah.
I don't know it.
Not my kind of thing, but I landed on it and I said, I know, I'll do it for Neil. I'll watch it for Neil.
Well, I know Derek wants to talk about Hamilton again because, he has a view on people.
Well, I mentioned it last week and you made faces at me, but you never actually told me why you didn't like it.
I actually didn't say I didn't like it.
He just doesn't like musicals. Oh, yeah, speaking of musicals, viewers, speaking of musicals, the musical extravaganza of the year, of the decade, and you said nothing.
On purpose.
Eurovision. The saga of the fire or something. Did you not watch it, folks?
The guy from Iceland.
Yeah. Did you watch it? Isn't it brilliant? Thoroughly enjoyed it. Although I don't like Will Ferrell.
I could not finish. I was like, it was cringy, and it was like, oh my god! But you had to see it out.
You have no soul. That's what's wrong with you. You have no soul, and you're there now. Go on back to your shopping trolleys now. Let me tell you, I'm going to come up with an index. I'm going to come up with an index now for people who don't like Eurovision, or the different scales of musicals and Eurovision and stuff like that. That's what I'm going to do now. Well, I won't this week because I'm quite busy now for the next few days. But that's what I'm going to do now.
This is on Disney Plus tomorrow. Tomorrow is the big day. Streaming Disney Plus.
It could be outside in the garden.
With the swear words edited out, Derek. But to mind, it's very family friendly now. They've taken out the swear words.
Oh no way! I'll be disappointed.
Is there swear words in it?
There is.
Well, let me tell you about Eurovision, the saga of fire and Will Ferrell, and let me tell you, James Bond is in it, folks.
Which James Bond now is that?
The only James Bond, the proper James Bond, Navin
Roger
Man.
Moore.
No, Navin Man, Pierce Brosnan. He was the best James Bond.
No, Sean Connery. Sean Connery's James Bond.
I thought Pierce Brosnan was brilliant. I think he was a great James Bond.
Look, Roger Moore. Roger Moore is the only James Bond. And now that you're finished talking, now that you've talked about your children's show, I've mentioned this TV show before.
My children's show.
Yeah, we're going to let the adults talk now, Derek.
My children's show. Oh my God.
Well, no, the teenager has said, and she's quite an accomplished musician. She says it is the greatest musical ever.
It is.
Yeah, no, I do. No, Hamilton is excellent. It is.
And
excellent.
she has seen live Rock of Ages. She's seen that one live in Broadway. There was a few of them, and she didn't know all the musicals here, you know, the traditional ones as well, and then all the Disney ones, you know, the Pocahontas. And
so if you want to watch something that's a little bit more mature and highbrow, I have mentioned this TV show. I've mentioned this TV show before, but it's season 3 has just dropped on Netflix. The German show Dark. I don't know if you two would watch it because it has subtitles, but the third season.
No, I'd prefer to read a book, Neil. I'd prefer to read a book.
Eurovision, the book. But Dark is excellent, and the third season definitely doesn't disappoint. It's a science fiction drama, but don't let the science fiction aspect put you off. The characters, the relationships, and the narratives are really powerful, really strong. And yeah, it's definitely check that one out. If you some people are like, I don't watch subtitled films because people don't like to read. But yeah, it's worth checking out. JDF Reality has jumped in on the James Bond debate and has said that he thought
Vanessa's right.
No, he didn't. No,
Vanessa's right.
That's definitely something we rarely hear on the site when someone says Vanessa's right. But Timothy Dalton, he's chimed in. Timothy Dalton was an excellent James Bond. The James Bond that Timothy Dalton played was very much a cutthroat James Bond. Took no prisoners. And Timothy Dalton was great. He's very charismatic, Timothy Dalton. He should have got more. He only had 2.
I don't know. That just Navin man for me anyway. I thought he was great, James Bond.
Oh dear, there's no accounting for taste on this show. There really isn't.
So, in fairness now, this show Dark you've recommended, the Working Moms is I have to say I really enjoyed it. I love the fact that they were only 20-25 minutes, and the script it's obvious she wrote and produced it for herself. You know, she gave herself the best lines, but I thought it was a great show.
Yeah, Working Moms is excellent. That's Ivan Reitman's daughter.
Oh, she's the spit of her dad.
Yeah.
Come here, what do we make of the All Ireland being on Christmas week? Well, not that she'll be there anyway, Derek. But
well, it might be. I might be. We hope if things improve, we hope to go home for Christmas.
I'm talking about being in the All Ireland final. That literally just went.
Oh, touché. Carlo Rising.
Yeah, well, we'll have to make sure you're drug tested now.
Low blow.
I think it's a good idea myself. We used to play right up to Christmas before. Well, Vanessa Ford, not really, but
well, Christmas is always the club championship for me. You know, like the Leinster club final. You know, that's. But love it.
Yeah, but the league used to start. The league used to start in October before.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, so I think it's a great opportunity for us to use the larger grounds with the floodlights as well. Yeah. You know. So.
Oh, come here! I have a big proposal of how the GAA should reorganise the championship to maximise revenue and maximise exposure and to build profile. But it's a long document, so I could do a show all by myself on that, Neil.
There you go. I might be washing my hair that night.
You'll not get the GAA on this show. I promise you. I tried.
So very quickly,
Vanessa, we'll have to set up a provisional broadsheet on the telly, you know.
Continuity.
Continuity. Republican broadsheet.
In the last series, like you would throw in a few jabs, all right, you know. But John would just bat it back at you, and you'd know where to go with it, like, you know. And then we did another. I remember I did all the pictures of the junior Bs. Do you know the way you could just lads on a Sunday, and they're there, you know. I just put together a gallery of pictures of different junior B shots, like,
yeah.
And he just it bounced off him, like, you know.
Anyway, watch Dark. Dark is the show to watch.
Huh?
There's two of us now, Vanessa. You know, there's two of us, so we can keep pushing.
Right. So it's getting close to bedtime. Give us your predictions for the next 7 days. What are we going to be talking about? What are we going to be hearing about?
I think we're still going to be talking about the government. I think we're still going to be talking about whether the schools will reopen.
Will we be going on holiday?
Well, you are.
I'm not going on holiday. Well, I'm not going on holiday that you think I'm going on. But will we be going on holiday? As in, will the nation be taking foreign holidays?
I think it's if they do something about the self-isolation when people land, I think people will go for it then. The idea of the heavily promoted staycation, that's not going to work, I think, because people will begin to realize how better off they are saving to go to the Bahamas or to Disneyland or to Spain, you know, where they get bang for their buck. So I don't think in the long run that's healthier, or it's a good option. There was something that occurred to me now. I said, oh geez, I bet you that's going to be a thing. It'll come to me. But the trolleys now, I mean, listen, we'll all be watching now how we do our trolleys in case there's somebody filming us behind the curtains.
In case Derek is filming. Derek, the US hit 50,000 cases in a day. Yesterday. Next week, are we going to be talking bigger numbers? How do you think things are going to look?
Arizona had more cases yesterday itself than the whole of the EU. Think about that. Population of, I think there's 7.5 million people in Arizona, 400 million people in the EU, and Arizona had more cases than. This is why it's so scary, you know. I think Russia bounties on American troops in Afghanistan is a massive story, and I think there's going to be more coming from that. Trump is going to say something outrageous again, no doubt about it.
Well, it's the arrest today of Ghislaine or Ghislaine.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, that might turn the table for Trump. You know.
I don't think so.
I think that's going to be the story of the summer.
I'd say there's a lot of powerful people who are worried, you know. A lot of very powerful people who are very worried. But then she's so ingrained in the circles, she knows what she has to do, you know.
Well, she's in for perjury as well, so there's not much of a defense you have for perjury.
Mm-hmm.
On that note,
the papers are up, folks.
I'm going to bed. Good night. On that note,
where's your bed there? Did you pull down one of those like in...
Do you recognize this backdrop?
It's Blake 7.
Nope. Derek, do you recognize it?
Is it Buck Rogers?
No.
It's Doctor Who. It's the TARDIS. The inside's a TARDIS.
Oh, that's like the house. Like that house, dude.
No,
I never saw Doctor Who. Never saw Doctor Who.
I liked yeah. I watched a bit of it with the teenager when they had the lady Doctor Who.
Lady Doctor Who. Oh my God, how are we still on the air? On that note, folks, big thanks to the Queen of Crumlin, Vanessa Foran. Thank you, Vanessa.
Oh, good.
And the self-proclaimed chieftain, High Chieftain of California, Derek Hamilton O'Donoghue. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Those of you in the chat.
No, excuse me.
Yes.
What's your own title? What title are you giving yourself?
I'm just Neil. I'm just plain old humble Neil. Prince? No, I'm not Prince. I'll be a Duke.
Duke.
Or a Lord. I could be a Lord or a Duke. I'll let you come up with my title.
I'd say
I think
Duke
Bishop.
Duke of the hipsters. I'm gonna go with that.
No,
Duke of the Hipsters.
Father Neil Curran.
Great. There you go. There you go. Monsignor. Right, so folks, thanks for tuning in. Those of you in the chat pit, can I see some names very quickly? JDF Reality was obviously in there. Janet was in there. I can't see everyone's name.
I tell you,
thank
you had
for
great
joining
crack there
us.
tonight, lads. Look at that.
We will be back hopefully next week. If you want to get in touch, email the site. If you want to come and chat with us on the panel, you can do so. But sleep well, wear a mask, and thank you. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Good night, everyone.